Yeah, he's awesome.
Well, what happened in your life? I mean, because I understand, like your parents are pretty solid people, good people. And sometimes we could have solid parents and they teach as best they can. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out right for your kids either. But just tell us a little bit about your story.
So we weren't practicing Catholic. I was baptized. I did my first communion. And that's basically the day of my first communion was the last time I heard about Jesus and the Virgin Mary. My mom, she got very involved into the New Age practices. And basically we just went further and further away from any type of faith that we had in the Catholic Church. And since God's blessing wasn't in our family and we were practicing very heavy, duty, spiritual things that weren't of the Lord, our family separated. And I lived with my father as a young girl. When I lived with my father, there was no boundaries, not very much discipline. He kind of became my friend. Good father, always provided, worked very hard. And I had my boyfriend. I did a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, pretty much rebellious. Thought that safe sex was a trick. I thought that, condoms and birth control was enough and that it would do the trick to not conceive. And when I started having intimacy with my boyfriend, I was pregnant. And what happened was, I was a little scared at the beginning, but he assured me that he wanted to become a father and protect me. And those words of assurance, of protection, at first I was convinced to go ahead and have the baby. But then after that, peer pressure, what am I gonna do, my goals, my dreams, what's my family gonna say, especially coming from a Latino family. It was very difficult for me. I decided to have an abortion. And I didn't tell my boyfriend the truth. I basically took away the privilege of him being a father. And I lied to him, but at the clinic they told me, it's nothing, it's a sac of tissue. I was pregnant 3 times, had 3 abortions, and 3 times they told me it was a sac of tissue. And after each abortion,
Was this man the father of these
Yes,
children?
it was my boyfriend. And after each abortion, I experienced heavy depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. I didn't understand what was going on, nightmares. I couldn't see children. I couldn't hear them cry. Anorexia. I got very thin, very low self-esteem. And the only thing they would tell me in the clinic is, you're just gonna have some cramping, you can go to work tomorrow. That's all they would tell me. They didn't tell me that, anything about post-abortion syndrome. Of course they were gonna tell me that, And I suffered greatly. And the funny thing is that he didn't know about the first 2 abortions, and he was suffering depression, and he was suffering anxiety and nightmares, and he would tell me, I'm having nightmares about babies calling me father. So he was suffering post-abortion syndrome, even though he didn't know he had 2 abortions. And many men have, they suffer.
He had that mystical union with you, even though you weren't maybe being honest with him, that was still happening.
So on the 3rd one, I forced him to go with me. I told him the truth, I'm pregnant, I don't want to have a baby. I want to keep traveling. I have dreams, I have goals. And it was, it was ignorance. It's lack of formation. I really thought I was aborting a sac of tissue. And after that 3rd abortion, my life was just miserable. So I moved away. I thought maybe I just need to start all over, leave the boyfriend, and just move away and start my life over again. And that's when I started working for Planned Parenthood. I've always worked in the medical field. I thought they were my heroes. I thought, they've always given me free condoms, free birth control. When they would call my home, they'd never say it's them. They'd always tell my father it was somebody else. They had my back. So when I started working, I really thought I was helping women. And I really thought I was going to help the youth, because that's what they make you think. When they go into universities and they have their stands, and they make you think they're for the youth. And working in Planned Parenthood is where I saw truth. They trained me to manipulate the women, to lie. They said never use the word baby, he or she, mother, father. Never let them see the ultrasound. That is, they cannot see the screen. And when I assisted the first abortion, I really thought that after that abortion, I was gonna look for a sac of tissue or a blob of cells, and that's when I found a baby in pieces. And that day was the most horrifying day of my life, because I faced truth, and I saw, that's where I found out that I aborted 3 of my own children. And it was just so traumatizing to know that I was a woman that had 3 abortions, worked in this place that was a nightmare. It was hell. It's hell on earth. And that's when I got heavy into drugs, cocaine and methamphetamine, because I didn't know who God was. and living on the streets, away from my family, away from people that love me. I was lost. And it was one day where I was sobbing on the street, where I couldn't handle life anymore. I didn't want to live anymore. And that's where I remembered Jesus and Mary during my first communion. And that's where I looked up at the sky and I asked God to forgive me for everything I've done. And this woman ran out of a restaurant and she held me and she said, Jesus loves you. He just spoke to my heart and he says that he forgives everything you've done, that he will always be with you and he'll never abandon you. That's where my life changed. And during this time that I was lost, thank God, my mother went back to the Catholic Church. So for 3 years, my mom was on her knees praying before the Blessed Sacrament, going to Mass for me, praying the Rosary. And it's because of my mother's prayers and God's mercy that my life has changed.
Let's pause right there. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and we're sorry for